This is the Justice Fighter Podcast. With attorney Gerald Griggs. Where we have conversations on social justice, civil rights, and political news that affects us all. Let attorney Griggs put you on game. Only on the Justice Fighter Podcast, y'all.
Justice Fighter Podcast. And again, we have one of our special guests, Dante Carter, is here. And we've been talking a little bit about something, and we wanted to bring it onto the podcast. A lot of people are asking the question, why are we going outside to protest? And so, as you know, we've already announced that on April the 5th at 1 o'clock, we will be outside protesting. I'm going to share the details, a little bit more of the details, as we are part of the coalition here in Atlanta. But there seems to be a conversation on social media about why African Americans should or should not be protesting. So I wanted to bring Dante into this conversation and get your take on why do you think all around social media there seems to be a call for African Americans to stand down?
Why are you talking to me like I'm a regular, newbie guest, man? I'm co-host.
Okay, well, you're co-host of the Justice Fighter Podcast, man.
Listen, let me do this. I'm gonna read the message that came in because I think this will bring context to this conversation that we're having and its importance. And so let me find this message real quick. But I feel like it's important to make sure that we are addressing these things, right? And so the response was, the question was, hi, Dante. Question regarding April 5th. National group of Black and brown women that I'm a part of is heavily doubting whether this day should get our support. Hashtag 92%. Myself, I'm on the fence, to be honest. The real life blowback for non-white people, including especially naturalized citizens like myself, is going to be swift and painful. Is one important argument, and some in this national group are unsure whether we should show up again and use our time, resources, energy elsewhere in the resistance. What are your arguments to go out there? Would love to hear your insights if you feel like responding. Of course, I did respond to her. And it was something that I was actually speaking to Attorney Griggs about. It's really not that deep, right, of a thought for me. And I say that because, and I know Attorney Griggs can relate to this as a father as well. This was the first time I ever heard my kid ask me, what do we do next? How in the world did Trump get in office, and what do we do next? My kid's 7 years old. She's in first grade, and this is a conversation that her friends are having. This isn't something that we poured into them. My wife was telling me, she said, I just kind of trailed back as they were walking into their class, and I heard them having this conversation about what things look like going forward. Our kids are looking up to us right now. They're looking up to us. I don't want to be the person that sat back when all hell was breaking loose. And excuse my French, but that's what's happening right now. We're in a day and age where we're going to find out who the fighters are. There's no running from this. There's no running. I don't know where we're going to go, but there is no running. We see they're coming after everything, our history books, our right to vote, closing the Department of Education. There's nowhere to go. And this isn't just a U.S. conversation. This is a global conversation about a group of folks who've been in power for a long time feel that power slipping away. Now, I don't care how they feel about power. What I care about is what's fair and what they put in that Constitution. That's what I care about. I care about ensuring that this world that we leave behind is much better off for our children than what we inherited. And, I shared this with Attorney Griggs. We talked a lot about it. I call myself getting myself together, right? Sitting down, getting therapy. And I remember in the middle of 2020, sitting on my therapist's couch, talking about the trauma that was coming out from being out in these streets, seeing these Black men shot and killed, seeing it all over the news, all over social media. And he said something that, Gerald, you like to laugh about a lot, right? Trauma
Yeah.
exists in the absence of justice. And you're not laughing in a he is funny, but in a sarcastic way, like duh. And I think we gotta have a real heart to heart with ourselves. We can pay money to go see therapists. We can pay money to take a vacation. We can do whatever we think we need to do for self care. But guess what? When we get back here, the fight is still going to be here. And the damage, if we don't step up right now, is going to be a lot more than what people think it is. If he's doing this in the face of small opposition, because it's small right now, what happens when there is no opposition?
Yeah. And you kind of experienced what I already went through in the first administration when after the first time that he won, my daughter asked the same question, and she was about the same age as yours. She was 8 at that time. And she asked, Daddy, did the evil man win? And I had to be honest with her and say yes. And then she asked me what I was going to do about it. And of course, I didn't know at that point. But I knew I was going to do something. And in that moment, we organized the largest protest in Georgia history, the Women's March. And so when I hear these questions happening in real time by African Americans and other people of color, yes, we know what's at stake. Yes, we
Yes,
understand that people are having real hard conversations about what they can and cannot do. But what I'm saying is our ancestors faced far worse, water hoses, dogs, lynchings, all of those things, and they still exercise their fundamental right to be outside, their fundamental right to push back against the attempts to erase them, literally. And so I think it's incumbent upon us as African Americans to join the protest, which is why, we have now joined in the coalition for the Atlanta portion of the Hands Off protest. And if you're interested, I'm going to put on the screen the mobilized link for you to join. So I'm gonna share my screen here with the link. But I think it's incumbent upon those that are able to come on out and be a part of what's going to happen in Atlanta. And so now on the screen is the Mobilize app, Mobilize link for Hands Off Atlanta, which is going to be announcing many of the partners that will be there. The Georgia NAACP and Atlanta NAACP are partners, as well as others that will be announced with 5051 and others that will announce the protest. But we want to go outside for a mass mobilization, a peaceful, nonviolent protest, but a protest nonetheless. Because when we talk about the attempts to dismantle the Department of Education, the attempts to end Social Security, the attempts to now have mass voter suppression on the federal level, similar to what's happening here in Georgia, I don't know how you stay inside. And so my question to those who are having this conversation about, well, maybe we need to sit this out because it doesn't really affect us. Well, you got mass deportations happening. You got the Department of Education being gutted. You have your voting rights being attacked. You have women reproductive rights that's already been taken. And now he's having widespread conversations about cutting Social Security. And that's just in the last couple of days, the things that are happening. And so it's incumbent upon us, all of us, to join with our brothers and sisters. Now, I understand that many are asking the question, well, Griggs, we didn't know who was going outside. Well, we going outside now. And from our history, we have been a part of some of the biggest marches in Georgia history. And so it's going to be a safe, secure march as much as we can. But you also have to understand that sometimes it's time for us to exercise our First Amendment rights. And that's why we're going to go from Piedmont to the Capitol, because again, the day after the end of legislative session is incumbent upon us to continue to send a message to our elected officials. And of course, we learned just today that the DEI bill has now resurfaced in Georgia. They're trying to pack the bill in on another bill. So again, I don't understand why we even having this conversation about whether or not a certain segment of our community should sit this out. It's not time to sit anything out. It's time to actually join. So, Dante, I see some people in the comments. I appreciate you, Miss Bartlett. She says she's going to be there with her sister and an 86-year-old mother. If they can come outside in March, everybody should be able to come outside in March.
Yeah, and just piggybacking off what you said, I mean, you were the one that brought this up earlier. Trump trying to pass SB 202 on the federal level, and so I think I want to say this because I didn't say this earlier, and I don't want to come off as hard and cold because that's not where I'm at. I know people are scared right now. I know people are upset. They're angry. There's a lot of confusion out there. I know we are probably in one of the most emotional states that we've been in this present modern political time, right? Um, but I also understand that if we don't do it, it ain't gonna get done. See, what I know is in 2020, when everybody was celebrating, thinking there's no way the Republicans come back, they sat back and they started moving slow. You started seeing people who were against Trump that fell in line. And I'm not saying we all need to fall in line. What I'm saying is last year everybody was running around, when we fight, we win, when we fight, we win, when we fight, we win. Well, where's the fight? Because if we sit down in this moment, we are definitely going to lose. There can't be this is too big for me moment. This moment isn't too big for any of us. What's at stake for each and every one of us is the future. And if we sit down, if we gamble, we can easily get caught up in, well, who's leading this protest? Who's doing this? Who's doing that? I get all that. What I'm saying, though, is that multicultural coalition that came out in 2016, that stood up when Trump passed the Muslim ban, we all got to come back out here as they're coming after with mass deportations. They're coming after our education. We got to come together. And we got to say in one voice, not only when we fight, we win, but we're ready to fight and we're ready to win. And we got to believe it. Because all this hesitation works in the favor of the opposition. We've got a moment. Gerald and I have been sitting on these phone calls. We've been planning. We've been diligent. We've been asking questions. It's time to stand up. This isn't about going out and destroying Teslas. We're not doing that. That's not happening with us. But we are going to go outside and we're going to be loud. Some streets might get blocked because there's going to be a lot of people outside. But we got to show up. And we got to remind people what this is about. This is about us, all of us. How we won in 2020 is because we went outside and we brought folks who've been outcasted in. We have to remember there are people outside that don't feel seen, don't feel valued, feel like this system is never going to work for them. It's on us to remind them that this system is here for all of us.
Absolutely. And we also have to remind ourselves what we did in 2016, what we did in 2020, and how the coalition grew from 2016 to 2017 to 2018, 2019, of course, culminating in 2020, how we continue to bring more people into the big tent and we continue to elevate our voices. And we had many wins, and we are seeing wins already in the judicial branch right now. But what we have to do is to make sure that we are continuing to feed people the correct information. There's a lot of misinformation on a lot of these platforms. And it's time for the people of good conscience to have a full scale rally, because many people don't understand the rallies. The rallies are mass teach-ins, they're mass meetings. They are an attempt to come together and share our ideals. And the bigger they get, the more you recognize it's not just you that are feeling the way you're feeling, and you get to release that. Like Dante was saying with his therapist, trauma exists in the absence of justice. Well, let's go get some justice. And there's no better way to get some justice than good trouble. And so we're going to summon the spirit of John Lewis, who was there at the Women's March, was there at the March for Our Lives, was at all of these protests. And remember, these protests were in the middle of the first Trump administration. So when we're talking about how to throw peaceful, nonviolent protests in the middle of a regime like this, we can talk from experience because we've done it before.
Yep.
We put thousands of people in the streets safely and brought them home safely, but we've also not shrunk from the battle. And let's be clear, in Georgia is one of the only states that continues to hold him accountable for what he did in 2020. That's why he's still on bond in a Georgia courtroom. And so it's incumbent upon us, by going outside as the fourth co-equal branch, to empower the other three branches to do the work of the people. You know, everything in America was born out of a protest.
Yeah.
Everything. It's the most American thing that you can do, a peaceful, nonviolent protest, but a protest nonetheless. So again, it's not about, you know, destroying property or doing anything like. It's about coming together to have a conversation, to say hands off. It's for our brothers and sisters who receive SSI disability checks. I mean, think about that for a minute, y'all. We saw one of the cabinet secretaries literally say, because his relative would not complain that she missed a Social Security check, everybody would be okay with missing a Social Security check. Let's be clear. Some people draw their entire income because they're disabled, or because they put into Social Security for all those years that they were working, and now we're talking about cutting it. And another thing that we are seeing happening, I mean, the biggest thing on the internet right now, aside from Jasmine Crockett, is what happened with the Signal chat. Now we're talking about a threat to national security because they invited a reporter into the Signal chat, but now they blaming the reporter. Again, this is happening every single day, and we are sitting back, not having a full-throated conversation about how a majority of America did not vote for this.
Yeah.
Did not agree for a billionaire to have access to our tax data, our Social Security data, and has never been vetted by Congress to be in the position that he's in. So again, these are the things that we need to have a conversation about. And also, to my African American brothers and sisters, to my Latino brothers and sisters, thank y'all, the Latino brothers and sisters, for already being outside for the mass deportations. But for my Black brothers and sisters, listen, and I respect the 92%. I respect y'all. But if you want to be the last time you voted, the last time you will vote, it's time for us to come outside and to bring out those experiences, those feelings. I know you feel tired. I know you feel disheartened. But when they cut your child's Pell Grant money, or when they cut the 2.26 million that goes to, you know, K through 5, I mean, from K through 12th grade in the Department of Education, you're not going to be worried about whether or not you were tired or whether you were part of the 92%. We have to make sure that we protect the interests of our community. And the best way to do that is to protest so that we can all convene together, have a strategy on how to push back and gain strength from being unified. We all know why the election was lost. We have already litigated that issue. We're past that. At this point, we are trying to protect those hard-earned gains that our ancestors stood up, fought for, and many of them died.
Yeah.
Anytime you see Jackie Roosevelt Robinson being deleted from a complete mention on the Department of Defense website, and you say you tired, I mean, what did Jackie have to go through just to break the color barrier? He didn't get tired of being called all kinds of names and black cats being put on the street, being put on the field, and him not being able to say anything. And even in his later years, he talked about that anger that built up inside of him, but he also talked about the resolve to fight for us. He saw us. He never accomplished everything that he wanted to accomplish by getting equality.
Yeah.
But we did. Now it's time for us to get some equity. And that's what this protest is about.
Let me ask you this, Gerald.
Yes.
Since 2016, how many times a protest you've been at went violent?
Went violent? Zero.
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 Zero. And so, I'm not the smartest tool in the shed, or the sharpest tool in the shed, I should say. But I think one can infer that because there have been zero acts of violence that has taken place from these protests, that these are well thought out protests, well planned, well prepared for. I mean, that is a very logical conclusion, correct?
That's a logical conclusion to draw, especially in the birthplace of civil rights. And even for the ones that we were not a part of, that did turn to some shenanigans, we were able to calm those issues and return to the purpose of the protest. I'll give you an example. You remember when there was some disturbance that happened on Peachtree a week and a half before our protest. What was the purpose of us going back outside in that other protest? Was to show that we know how to protest. We know how to be principled in the protest, and we know how to get our voice and our point across.
Yeah.
We understand that people are frustrated, but we never resort to the tools of the oppressor to protest the oppression. I believe a great Atlantan said that darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. And I mean, we need to channel Martin in this moment. Martin was never afraid to go outside, but we need to understand that we have to have that same conviction as he did, because that's the shoulders upon which we stand.
Yeah. Shoulders upon which we stand, and we know the work isn't done. The work ain't done. I mean, it's so much that I could say about this moment, but I think the biggest thing that I hope resonates with the viewers is that there's a deep need and a deep desire for you to get out and do something. I wouldn't be receiving DMs about this if people weren't conflicted, and that's what's happening. Folks are conflicted, and they're not conflicted in a bad way. But the only way to ease the confusion, the emotions, everything that you're going through right now is you got to go outside. You got to be with the people who are carrying this burden with you, so that you can realize how light it is when you share it.
Yeah.
This ain't hard, y'all. We know what's at stake. We know what we got to do. We ain't got to preach. We ain't got to teach. We ain't got to do any of that. What we got to do is show up and remind the world that a majority of this country don't fool with the dude that's in the White House right now.
Yeah.
Does not agree with the executive orders he's signing. Like this, y'all, I don't think that y'all understand. Like, there are people who are looking up to see who the leaders are, who the next generation of folks are to help them. We got education systems that are wondering on July 1st if that Title I money is going to clear, if a judge is going to rule against him in town and make sure this money clears. There's a lot that's going on. We got principals out here recruiting business owners to ensure that they can still offer free meals to their students. And I think people forget about what's being taken. And so we got to have a real conversation about these things and remember, whether it was the women's movement in the 70s, yelling and sharing your voices in opposition against the war. It all came down to people being outside and visibly showing that they had disdain for what's going on. So we got to do what's been done over and over and over again. And for all the folks who are saying this is the worst time in American history, I don't see no plantations outside. I don't see a slave market in the middle of the town square. I don't see these things. And so if we had folks who didn't have rights fight to get the right to vote, this is not the worst time in history. What we're feeling, what we're seeing is a lack of organization. And we got to get back to doing the work.
Absolutely. And I mean, all you have to do is look at the headlines. I mean, look at this headline right here. This headline right here.
Mhm.
Trump signs order to overhaul US elections, including requiring proof of citizenship. Now, remember when he said that if you vote this time, you won't have to vote again? I mean, this is how you set precedent here. This is, and again, he doesn't have the power to do this, but that's not stopping him from doing this. I mean, I could pull up some other stuff. I mean, we could now. I'm gonna go back to the hands-on protests because again, I want everybody to go ahead and go to the website, go to Mobilize, and then go to Hands Off Atlanta, Georgia Fights Back. It has the time, the whole placeholder there, so you can sign up. But that's just one of the things that he's done. I want to show you a few other things that have happened, just recently. And you know, we can literally talk about these things in real time. But I mean, whoever thought that you would see the attempt to roll us back to a time where you would see a headline like, wait, I can't use that one. Um, Give me a moment. But you would see a headline like this.
Mm.
Well, not the Seth Rogen headline. Close. Seth is funny, allow. But why can't I get this? There we go. This headline.
Mm.
I mean, why are we even having? See, that's what happens when you don't have subscriptions to this stuff. But um, when did you ever think in 2025 you would see a headline like this? Is segregation legal in U.S. after Trump lifted ban for contractors? And again, for those that don't know, there was a memo that went around. It says the General Services Administration has lifted its requirement for the prohibition of segregated facilities in government contracts on February the 15th to comply with the executive order signed by President Donald Trump. In a memorandum, the GSA shared with the list of clauses that should no longer be included in contracts with the federal government, including one related to the prohibition of segregated facilities.
Mm.
I mean, it's literally in the memo. And
Mhm.
so when we talk about why it's important for certain groups to be outside, I mean, it doesn't get more important than that.
Yeah.
And again, we never thought we'd see a time where you would see this. And again, Washington Post is reporting this, Newsweek, Time, Syracuse.com, because I know a lot of people say we're not supposed to look at fake news. So, I mean, since everybody's reporting this, and I can pull up the actual memo. This is another reason why it's time for us to go outside, y'all. And I mean, this will not be the only protest, but this is the beginning of the protest to make sure people understand what's at stake, that they in fact have allies, that we are in fact well organized and well thought out, and that it's time to push back on this stuff while you still have time. Dante, thoughts?
Man, it's that waiting room for colored only, right? It hits different. I think this is why I've been, and Gerald, you and I had these conversations a lot. And I think this is a good time for us to kind of shed light on some of these conversations we had because a lot of people don't get a chance to hear us as unfiltered as we are with one another. But when we talk about the time that we're in, right? Folks want to know what's the plan? What do? We protest. We got to get back to organizing, right? And organizing in a way where we're getting to the action component. And when I say the action component, and when I say the action component, what I'm thinking of is Gerald, go back up to that colored sign.
This one right here.
Yeah. Waiting room for colored only. This was not that long ago, y'all. I don't know if it says 1961, May
Yeah,
of
May of
1961.
1961.
This is not that long ago, right? This was established by the municipalities. The federal didn't do this. It was the mayors in your community, the city council people in your community. So when we talk about what needs to be addressed, right? Which government directly impacts us? Trump does too. But if we don't have mayors in the city that we live in who value diversity, who value inclusion, who value equity, oh, it's going to be a long time for y'all, right? It's going to be a hard time. What we got to do is we got to start ensuring that we have elected leadership that reflects the greater majority of the people. And the greater majority of people value diversity, they value equity, and they value inclusion. But guess what happens when they don't hear these points? They get resigned. Registration ain't the issue in Georgia, it's resignation, right? We've allowed people to fall into resignation. And those of us that understand what's at stake, we got to get back and we got to reconnect with the community leaders. Remind them that we see the people in their neighborhoods. Remind them that we understand the everyday struggles. Because it's going to take a lot to move. We understand this stuff at a very high level, right? A lot of us, a lot of folks listening today. But we got a lot of people in our community that it's hard for them to look up to think about who's running the country because they feel like they're being squashed under the burden of debt. They can't afford to pay their bills. They're finding new jobs, but they're not seeing pay increases. This is a real reality for people. And so we got to be able to show people that we care about them too. There's no way for me to protect my daughter if I'm not showing up for these kids in these schools in the city that I live in. That's just the reality. You got to bring their concerns to the table along with yours. We have to make sure that people understand what true allyship looks like. Allyship isn't, Gerald, you got what you needed. All right, you sit down and we're going and we'll be all right. No, that's not it. Allyship is we don't stop marching, we don't stop talking, we don't stop moving forward until every group that's with us get what they came for. And somewhere along the way, we forgot about that, and it gave the Magites an opportunity to regroup, and we got to get back to it. Because I remember in 2020, passing out food, holding toy drives, food drives. We did everything we needed to do for the community to feel valued. We got to get back to that. Because if we don't get back to that, they're going to get back to this waiting room for colored on.
Absolutely. And we all know that the marginalized groups are the canaries in the coal mine.
Yep.
And so if they're coming for the marginalized groups, it's only a matter of time before they come for you. And so, what Dante is talking about is continuing to build that Big Ten. And let's be clear, this is not a bash Republican session.
Yep.
But what this is calling out what's happening on the far right that's pushing this type of divisive politic in our country. And again, there are people of good conscience in all of the parties that need to speak to this. Because again, I don't know how segregated facilities help anybody to do anything. I don't know how continuing to take people's civil rights away from them because you are afraid of them helps anybody. Let's be clear. This is a nation of laws. 1964-65 Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act and the Fair Housing Act dealt with all of this. So, I mean, it's not like he can do these things. But for him to even have the temerity or the gall or the courage to put something like this on paper and we not respond,
Mm.
what does that say to what our ancestors went through to get us to the point where we don't have to worry about this anymore?
Yeah.
And this is not the only group that this affects. That particular um, executive order didn't just deal with Black folks. When we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, we're not just talking about Black people, okay? We're talking about all of the marginalized groups. And so when you see these things, you have to say something. You
Yeah.
have to do something. You have to speak truth to power. And one of the reasons why we are going to be more intentional in calling this stuff out on these platforms is because we've seeded the platforms to the really loud and the really wrong.
Yep.
And we're not going to do that anymore.
Not
So,
anymore.
if you have some sort of belief that is counterintuitive to what Americans really believe, and what Americans believe are enshrined in that Constitution and all of the amendments, then we're going to call it out, and we're going to do it in the most American way. We're going to do it in protests. We're going to do it in litigation. We're going to do it in legislation, which is one of the reasons why the NAACP just earlier this week filed an action, and I'll pull it up for you. Filed an action to stop the dismantling of the Department of Education, because again, this is what we do, and we're not afraid to do it loud.
Yeah.
And so I can't find the association's website, but here it is. Coalition sues to stop the dismantling of the Department of Education. And again, when we talk about the Department of Education, we're talking about so many programs that help so many Americans, whether that's post-secondary education, whether that's, of course, high school, middle school, and elementary school, all the Title I schools. And these things are happening in real time now. This is not an esoteric, examination in what's possibly happening. This is actually happening.
Yeah.
He's actually, threatening lawyers also. We haven't gotten into that. But so when we call for a protest, it's because it's time for the protest. It's time for us to be what our ancestors foresaw. And that's everybody's ancestor,
Yeah.
not just the black and the brown people. Because again, there's history in this country of Japanese internment.
Yeah.
There's history of this country of discrimination against Irish, and discrimination against Italian, and discrimination against so many people who at that time were considered the other.
Yep.
Well, why don't we join together and push back on this the way we know how, the most American way possible? So again, I'm going to put the Mobilize back up on the screen. More details will be coming of more organizations, many legacy organizations that you do know and trust, who will be making sure that this is the type of protest that's family friendly, but also focused, that we have to go back outside. So Dante, you got any last words for the people as we come to the conclusion of this edition of the Justice Fighter podcast?
Yeah, can you just real quickly, if you haven't, add that mobilize into the chat so that folks can click on it.
Okay, let me do that.
And then, there was a saying last year, and we talked about it earlier. What was it again? The NAACP coined it, and they ran with it. They ran far with it. What was it again?
You talking about when we fight, we win?
You said when we what?
When we fight, we win.
When we fight, we win. G, you and I have been doing a whole lot of fighting. Whole lot of fighting. And they keep telling me about the big bad folks on the other side and Trump's camp and who support him and who did what. But what I learned, and that's, I can say this, that's one of the things that I really appreciate, running with Gerald with is, you kind of get comfortable being on the outside. You kind of get comfortable knowing that you got to stand up and remind people that you have rights. And it's crazy because when you stand up and remind people that you have rights, when you remind them about the importance and the power of community, when that community is being marginalized, you work to lift them up. Something special happens. And something special happened this week. You know, we had a Georgia State Senate, right? Where bipartisan support acknowledged the work of the Juneteenth Federation, the Georgia NAACP, the Atlanta NAACP, Georgia Lifelink, and so many other organizations that came together in Sandy Springs to ensure that we got Juneteenth here, not just as a day of celebration, but also as a city ordinance, where, and it's crazy to say this, right? How we can celebrate the 4th of July, but this day of freedom as well, and everybody's working on there. And it started with emails that were coming in from Black residents in Sandy Springs. And we answered the call, right? We got to the finish line, and there was some respect that came with that. And I just want to use this as a moment to remind y'all that when they realize they can't walk all over you, when they realize that you were there, when they realize that you have to be seen, you demand to be seen, heard, and valued, what happens, G?
You win.
You win.
Yeah. And that's one thing I want people to understand. We can go down a whole list of wins that the community has won since 2016 because they stood up and they fought back and they elevated their voices and they recognized that they weren't the only ones who were feeling this way. And that's what we always learn at a protest. You'd be amazed the number of your neighbors and friends and family that come out to these protests, and you start seeing that you feel exactly the same way they do, regardless of their religion or lack of religion, their skin color, or their creed or sexual orientation, what language they speak. I mean, you start seeing that we're more alike than we are different. And it's just the powerful 1% that want to separate us. I mean, think about it. The two guys on this flyer right here, these are two billionaires. 2 billionaires.
Money, money, money.
Who know nothing about the struggle of average working families, who just trying to make ends meet, who don't want to think about 1850 or 1950. They're actually trying to work to get to 2050. But we're having this political conversation because folks of good conscience have not stood up and said enough.
Yep.
Enough. And we have to be clear on something. The entire world is watching us right now. The entire world. And they're wondering, what happened to America? What happened to this country that espoused all of these great rights and wonderful things that they do for the entire world because they are the city on the hill, beacon, this light of democracy. I mean, France literally said they want the Statue of Liberty back. France said that. Canada has literally launched a tariff war against the American people because of these two guys.
Yep.
These two guys.
Yep.
And for the weaponization of this immigration topic, we have an immigrant and the child of an immigrant demonizing immigrants. I mean, let that sink in for a moment. How did we get here? Listen, y'all, it's time for us to send a message. And I can think of no better place to do it than Atlanta, Georgia, the birthplace of the civil rights movement, and arguably the birthplace of the social justice movement. So again, y'all, Saturday, April the 5th, go ahead and sign up for the Mobilize. You can go, I dropped it in the chat on Facebook and YouTube. If you're on Twitter, just go over to Google and Google Hands Off Atlanta, Georgia Fights Back, and sign up. You'll get all of the updates as we continue to roll out the plan. I can tell you now, the mass mobilization will start at Piedmont Park. We're going to the Capitol. The more details will come. We're excited about some of the speakers that we will have, and we're excited about the march. But we're going to send a message, y'all. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever, because we back in the not taking one step back. We never took one step back. We don't plan on taking one step back. And we will also give you some tangible solutions on how we address this issue. Because in Georgia, there's a way to stop this immediately. And it involves some elected officials here in this state. So again, y'all stay tuned. Please sign up for the Mobilize. Do me another favor. I need y'all to share this episode of the Justice Fighter podcast on all platforms, because we want as many Georgians to be a part of this. And I also want you to share a message to the folks that say it's not time to go outside. Well, then when will be time to go outside? Are we going to wait till everybody else is gone and you're the only person left to go outside? That's not how we do it in Georgia. And so I'm excited about what's coming. We've been planning. We got another planning call tomorrow. Actually, no. Yeah, it is tomorrow.
Yep.
And so we'll continue to keep you updated. And we're going to see you on the next episode of the Justice Fighter podcast.
And thank you to the Georgia Senate. We appreciate y'all. Josh McLaurin, President of the Senate. We appreciate all y'all. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you, Bert. Appreciate you.
I wasn't even going to say the name, but all right now.
Hey, sometimes you got to thank folks for when they do the right thing. We'll see you on the next episode of Justice Fighter podcast.